You're listening to Accounting for Growth, the podcast where growth leaders in accounting go beyond referrals alone and think bigger. I'm Chad Person, your host and the founder and president of Accounting CMO. Each episode, we bring in experts at the edge of accounting innovation to share quick, actionable insights that help you lead with confidence, drive smart growth, and move your firm forward. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Accounting for Growth podcast. And I've got a new 3-part series that we're going to kick off today. Topic overall is leading growth with clarity and confidence. Super excited about this series. This first episode today, we're going to kind of kick it off with tackling a tough question around why so many professional services firms, especially CPA firms, really struggle with kind of bucking the status quo. And really making significant change to drive growth in their firm. Excited to be joined today by Charles Brower. Charles, he's an expert, right, in helping professional services firms grow, and he's led a lot of significant growth initiatives over his career. And Charles, welcome.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, give a brief background on yourself.
Happy to. So I have spent quite a bit of time in CPA firms, more than 15 years in local, national CMO roles across the spectrum: industry marketing, functional marketing, and then leading marketing across field and corporate. So I think I have a deep appreciation of those complex issues that exist in this environment, in this ecosystem, and the technical proficiencies required to meet those issues for clients. I would tell you that, just to kick this off, when CPA firm leaders address marketing, they usually have a full plate of issues. They're not for lack of things to do.
Right.
And modernizing the marketing approach, which is one of the things we're going to start to talk about today, is sometimes not at the top of that list. It's not a priority. Lots of facets to running a CPA practice successfully. And I'd like to just start with, it is possible to change your marketing approach, to build a strategy, to come up with an approach that enables that growth that you need.
Yeah. No, 100%. And again, I'm super excited. You and I have talked about the opportunity to bring this series to market. You and I are on the same page in understanding the opportunity to really modernize the marketing function inside of a CPA firm is long overdue, and it's something, as you suggested, that's not necessarily at the top of the priority list. One of the things, though, as we unpack this and we talk about it initially, is how does a firm step outside the norm or break that status quo in the pursuit of growth? One of the things that I'm excited to get going, and let's roll, is this idea of breaking the status quo and how a firm can get trapped, honestly, and just always doing the same thing again and again and again. I mean, that's right, a common thing in business. What do you see in terms of barriers, an initial barrier related to that breaking the status quo, specifically around common thought processes that have been around forever?
Yeah, I see, and it continues to persist. Growth depending on, I call them failed tactics, cold calls, standardized email blasts that are endless, or even worse, random dinners and lunches. And the issue there is not that any of those things are bad, but I call them random acts of marketing. They're essentially, tactics they just don't produce results. And in the AI-enabled world that we are very quickly becoming a part of, they are wildly out of date. Right. So the shift that we'll talk about this a little bit today, the shift that needs to be considered at least, is becoming, I always use this as a client obsession, becoming client obsessed around issues and solutions that can, on the back end, drive accountability within the firm and action in the firm, and on the front end, really, truly serve a great need that exists in the marketplace. Yeah. So if you're not optimizing the things that you're doing, And don't worry about it because this is not you're not the first one, and it's not the only time that this has happened.
Right.
The strategy for growth that's founded in client issues, solutions that address those issues, whether it's audit, tax, or consulting,
Mm.
that are organized around a firm-wide adopted vision for marketing become a focused they become focused activities, and they're better received by clients,
Yeah.
and they're actually better received by the marketplace.
Yeah, you're 100%. I mean, I think, adding to that, I think that kind of, you and I have talked about this multiple times. I talked to accounting firms and I asked them about their growth goals, and their growth goals, their strategic plan is to grow by 10% or 15%, right? And although, hey, that may be a legitimate target for you, what we're talking about here and what oftentimes can be missing is really getting intentional about growth, right? And having a target number for growth, or even in some cases just simply saying, yeah, we have a growth plan, doesn't always necessarily equal to having an intentional strategy. And you find that to be the case as well?
Yeah, I think that even before that, and we'll get into this in just a second, there's a couple of steps even ahead
Hmm.
of building your strategy, right? You really have to step back and say, where are we now, and what are those gaps that exist, and is there a playbook that we can build? And that's what we're going to be addressing over the next couple of podcasts. Is there a playbook that we can build that's based in a pretty well adopted methodology, some reference points that we know will work for us, and that is sufficient to meet the size of our firm, the
Yeah.
scope of our firm, and what we're trying to do?
Yeah. So again, that breaking that status quo, where do you see that? Like, give me some examples of how you see that commonly holding firms back.
Yeah, so I think that there's two or three things. One is uh, the notion of random acts of marketing is really easy. It's an easy thing to continue to support and endorse. And as long as you're as far as you're getting along, you don't have to change your people necessarily. You don't have to change the technology. You certainly don't have to change the processes. But if you are getting serious about a growth objective over a 24, 36, 48 month period of time, and you know that you're going to require additional new client pipeline into your firm, it's imperative, and it cannot be. I can't overstate this. It's imperative to set a vision for
Mm,
what you want marketing to be.
mm,
And before that, you have to actually put an assessment together of where you are, and then use that assessment properly. Use it as a leaping off point to to build the vision that you want to build.
sure.
Um, I think, and just digging that a little bit more, I think most CPA firms are prone to have gaps in market segmentation, gaps in account buyer insights,
Sure.
gaps in
Sure.
issues and solutions mapping. That's one of my big interests. Is you put a two by two together and you figure out what's most important for the people that you're talking to.
Yeah.
It goes, modern communications channels, business development platforms, and the list goes on and on and on. It can be daunting. So if you back up and you say, we're going to do things the way we've always done them, that's easy. You have to say, well, gosh, we may have to make some changes, and those may be a little bit difficult to digest, but it's going to pay off, and it does pay off in a big way.
Yeah, it does. And so, yeah, you've hit on this, but oftentimes these barriers, they're cultural, right? They're absolutely a mindset issue that tends to kind of be rooted in how they have achieved success up to this point. Referrals is a great example. I mean, oftentimes, firms get to a point where they realize that what got them there, right, is not going to get them to the next level or to their next set of growth goals. And another example, I was talking to a firm the other day where, I think through our discussions of how to kind of make an investment in a more comprehensive growth culture, they realized that they had been operating for some time under the notion that they could continue to growth with only one or two real rainmakers in their firm, right? And Obviously, there's a lot of risk associated with that, but again, it is a cultural or mindset obstacle oftentimes for firms as they try to reevaluate how to grow and continue success into the future.
Yeah, I think you find that's very prevalent in the past, right?
Yeah.
And up until, let's say, maybe even the 90s or the early 2000s, that the referral network, those one or two rainmaker individuals, were the point of the arrow in terms of driving
Yeah.
new business.
Yeah.
But there are new pressures. We all know there's new pressures.
Sure.
Consolidation is a big issue. Private equity investment in this space is a huge driver. And competition is a huge
Yeah.
driver too. So if you're facing any of those, and I would suggest that most of the people listening to this are going to be facing one or all of those shortly, you might have to be forced to another look
Right.
at what your marketing team is offering up to you. I would say, I'll give you an example. I'm part of a conversation. I won't identify the firm or anything about it particularly, but I'm part of a conversation. Go back to that culture notion,
Yep.
where the culture of let's say a 50-year-old firm is so strong, their client base, how they've operated, what they do for clients, how they have done the work that they're doing, a traditional CPA firm for so long, that it has come to a point with an individual that was brought in specifically to transform the organization. It's come to a point where it's going to either be yes or no,
Yeah.
and they're spending a great deal of money, both on the standard that they've used for 50 years, and on the possibility of transformation. And that's why I say an honest, practical assessment followed by a vision is just absolutely necessary.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. And wow, I mean, I get it. It's again, as you suggested, it's that cultural piece that can be decades, right? Created over a period of time inside of firms that can be such the obstacle. So culture certainly can be one of those areas. Let's expand this though. I mean, you can move past that's the status quo piece and identifying what's holding you back. But then there's also a part here that relates to skill, like understanding kind of the new definition of what talent should be in the future within a CPA firm. There's structure, there's process related barriers. What are your thoughts on that from your experience?
Yeah, so let me give you an example of a real world experience that I had at Deloitte, and it really was back in the 90s. Deloitte as a firm realized that they had these a lot of offices with a lot of people,
Yeah. Sure.
a lot of people, a lot of offices, and a lot of places where I call it they were leaking information, leaking revenue, leaking growth opportunities, just
Mm,
all over the place.
mm.
And
Yeah.
so they made a strategic decision to run a pilot for something called business development centers. And I was a part of the second wave of that, the first wave, but the second city of that pilot in Los Angeles. And it was a dedicated effort with a senior partner at the helm to create a new strategy, to embrace shareholders in a different way,
Yeah.
to build out that the necessary staff to enable a true biz dev center concept. And I would tell you that those pilot centers focused on that mapping between issues and solutions alignment,
Sure.
focused on methodology for account management, set up annual on-site account review sessions. So I remember sitting at Disney with the buyers at Disney and saying, okay, so what are your problems for the next 3, 6, 7 months? And it's surprising if you'll take the time to drill that far down into account needs, requirements, problems,
Sure.
you'll be surprised what people will tell you. And so
Well, I'm
that
sure.
over time it became both an external program that was extremely successful,
Uh,
and internally changed the mindset, changed the culture, and allowed all the partners to say, "Oh, wait a minute, I've got this new pipeline approach that I'm hearing about. I better go be a part of that."
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And from my perspective, I think about structure inside of a firm process. I mean, the external pressures as well that can exist. I mean, obviously, the first thing comes to mind is technology, right? The impact of that, AI, et cetera, on the profession. Obviously, it's driving so much efficiency for the profession around how work gets done, and obviously, um, that increase in efficiency, I think, is giving firms the opportunity to reevaluate how to leverage talent or redefine what talent even is in their firms moving forward. We've obviously had many firms for several years talking about how to reskill their staff to put them in a position to be more advisory, rethink how they're recruiting to look for talent that is more inclined to be more in an advisory type setting. So I think those are obviously keys that need to be considered as you think ahead and plan for growth. And then the other thing I would say is, again, just mentioned it, but like the client experience, the buyer that is in the marketplace today, and certainly as it continue, that new buyer that continues to emerge as we look ahead, their preferences in terms of how they receive solutions from CPA firms are going to be dramatically different than the way many firms deliver their services today. That client experience is going to be more digital. It's going to be more real time. It's going to be certainly an efficient experience. I mean, you sense that as well, I assume?
I think that's absolutely right. And I would tell you that in many, many surveys in our world, in the professional services world, that's documented now that those buyers, the ideal client profile buyer, is making a decision. 50 to 70% of their decision is made before they ever talk to you.
That's right.
Okay. So that requires the firm to address the conversation in a different way. It requires the firm to get serious about understanding those needs, to build a relationship with those people over time, to build the brand with those folks over time. And listen, it's interesting because the first wave, the internet, changed everything about the way that we market to those clients digitally. Everything's digital now, and you and I are old enough to know that didn't always exist.
Yeah,
always exist.
right.
You know,
Right.
I remember going to a print press restaurant.
Yeah.
And now, so that if you're not fully digitally enabled, you are at least one generation behind.
Yeah.
I scare you, and now with the advent of AI, and week by week, you are going to be two generations behind with the adoption of the research, the account knowledge, the solutions mapping, the communications channels required to do exactly what you just said, Chad, to reach people. And I call it go to where they are. You don't have to bring people to you. Go where they are,
Right.
and deliver content that's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always say, from a content perspective, you're saying the same thing. The conversation is already going, right? I mean, the dialogue already exists. Be a part of that, right? And obviously, content's one effective way to provide hopefully what will be long term a context or a backdrop to meaningful conversations between your firm and its your advisors and that prospect. So let's close in here. I mean, again, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to bucking the status quo and kind of changing the paradigm when it comes to rethinking growth in your firm. Let's start zooming in here on, if a managing partner, if a leader of growth, right, that's listening to this, is focused in on maybe that first step. What's that initial barrier that they could confront, if you will? What would be your recommendation there?
So I think it starts with number one. It starts with creating an honest, practical assessment of your existing approach.
Yeah.
Right. Map that out. Map out the required resources and needs for marketing to get up to speed. And a shameless plug. You are on point for being able to provide references for that, a methodology for that, insights for that are proven. Right.
Right.
This is not, again, it's not something that's new. Everyone in this business has struggled with this. And so find a resource that you like and start having a conversation about an assessment. That is followed by using those findings to start to develop a new marketing vision. And I use that record carefully a vision for what you want to do. You may have to have a few iterations of that. It's not going to be perfect the first time around, but once you've socialized that vision statement, that vision paragraph internally with your partnership, you've discussed it maybe even with a couple of client friendlies that you want to test it with, you're going to get to a tighter point where you're happy with the way that the vision's shaping up. And then start to think about a pilot, right? Run a pilot program that is fully digital, that maybe even includes some AI elements to it in terms of the outreach and the expansion. And then I'd tell you, stay tuned, because we're going to talk about some of those things on number 2 and number 3 of this podcast and get into that.
We are for sure. And yeah, I mean, I 100% align with you. I mean, I think, take a step back, as you suggested, and really cast that vision for what success will be for your firm. And then, from there, I often find vision can be lacking, certainly, but even sometimes when there is a vision, I feel like there's always they stumble out of the blocks when they try to translate that vision into a strategic plan. When I work with firms and I look at their strategic marketing plan or strategic growth plan, I often find that it's about 80% planning and 20% strategy. There's just a lack of strategy, and generally it's more of a planning checklist of the things that they want to do over the next 18 months, what have you. And what it lacks is a real, again, intentional focus on how they want to grow, strategic growth, right? And so, I think that's the key. And as you suggested, we are going to unpack even more of that as we move forward with the next episodes. Charles, I love always when I can connect with you and talk to you about growth ideas, removing obstacles for firms. Thanks for jumping on and starting this 3-part series with me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So everyone, hey, today we've peeled back that initial, hopefully visible force maybe that's holding your growth hostage. Lots more to come as we look ahead. Episode 2, Charles and I will move from barriers to kind of focusing on breakthroughs, and we'll share some practical playbook ideas, if you will, for building a modern growth engine inside your firm. So look forward to that. And until next time, continue to account for growth in your firm. That's a wrap on this episode of Accounting for Growth, powered by your CMO. We help accounting leaders break the status quo. Please subscribe, share, and stay sharp. Your next big growth move starts now.